Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a little different.
Yeah, a bit of a departure for us.
Right. Usually we take a stack of articles or, a new book and we try to summarize it for you. We try to give you the Cliff's Notes.
But today is different. Today we are diving into what is essentially a vindication.
The vindication.
Yeah, it's a defense case, really.
Huh.
A defense of the unreasonable people.
The unreasonable, the difficult, the people who just don't fit into the neat little boxes that society builds for us.
Exactly.
We're looking at a set of documents, excerpts, really, from the source material that bridge the gap between two massive philosophical works. It's the conclusion of one era of the author's thought and the violent birth of another.
And we're talking about education, the nature of research,
Yeah.
and a deeply personal, almost cinematic journey of intellectual isolation.
Right. And at the center of all this is a fundamental disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
On one side, you have what the text calls and I love this phrase, the Soviet Harvard delusion.
It really stops you in your tracks, doesn't it, Soviet Harvard?
It totally does.
It's meant to. It connects the top-down control of the Soviet Union with the top-down intellectualism of the Ivy League.
Right.
And on the other side of this disconnect, you have the freelance entrepreneur, the engineer, the artist, the people who are actually out there doing things.
The source material puts it pretty bluntly. It says, doing is wiser than you are prone to believe.
I mean, that's the thesis right there. And deeper than that, it suggests that the people who have the courage to live in a world they don't fully understand are the ones who actually move the needle.
Not the ones who try to explain it all away with linear models.
Right.
So our mission today is to unpack this disconnect for you. We're going to look at why the source argues that our current education system might just be a fragile bubble waiting to burst. We're going to trace the author's personal story, which involves a necktie, a trash can, and a frozen attic.
It's a great story.
It really is. And finally, we're going to wrap our heads around this concept of nonlinearity.
Which is a concept that sounds complicated, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. It literally changes how you look at everything from your coffee cup to the stock market.
But before we get to the attic and the coffee cup, let's start with the people. The source starts with this incredibly strong defense of these unreasonable mavericks.
Right.
It lists them out. Engineers, freelance entrepreneurs, innovative artists, anti-academic thinkers. Why does the author feel the need to vindicate these people? I mean, are they really under attack?
How do you mean?
Well, I look around, and it seems like we worship entrepreneurs, the college dropouts who build tech empires. They're the heroes of the modern age, aren't they?
We worship their success, sure, but do we respect their method?
Oh, interesting.
That's the distinction the source is making. We love the billionaire at the end of the journey, but historically, the tinkerer, the person who is just messing around without a clear theory, they've been reviled by the intellectual class.
Reviled. That's a strong word.
Perhaps dismissed is better. The source argues that history is written by the talkers, not the doers.
Okay.
So when we look back at history, the talkers insert themselves into the narrative. They make it look like the theory came first and the invention came second.
I see.
But the key trait of these mavericks isn't just that they were smart or bold, it's that they had the courage to accept living in a world they knew they didn't understand.
That is a fascinating distinction. Usually, we think of an expert as someone who does understand the world. If I hire an expert, I want them to know exactly how the machine works.
Right.
But here, you're saying the expertise comes from accepting that you don't know.
Yeah, and not just accepting it, but enjoying it. That's the kicker. They enjoyed the chaos.
Right.
The source contrasts these people with academic thinkers. The argument is that we have this, what the text calls, the lecturing birds how to fly epiphenomenon.
Okay, we have to stop right there. Lecturing birds how to fly. I love the image, but walk me through the logic.
So it's a metaphor for the linear model of progress. Imagine a government department filled with aerodynamicists.
Okay, guys in lab coats.
Exactly. They spend years writing equations about lift, drag, thrust. They stand in front of a flock of birds and lecture them on how to fly.
Right.
The birds, being birds, just take off and fly.
And the aerodynamicists high-five each other and say, look, it worked. Our lecture made them fly.
Precisely. It's the arrogance of thinking that the explanation caused the event.
Wow.
The source is debunking this linear model. We tend to think that academic research leads to scientific knowledge, which then leads to technology, which then leads to practical application.
But wait, isn't that how it works? I mean, look at the atomic bomb.
Sure.
That was pure physics. Einstein, Oppenheimer. And it was translated into a device. or GPS. You need general relativity for GPS to work. You can't just tinker your way to a satellite network.
That's the counterargument, and it's a totally fair one for very specific high-tech fields. But the source argues that for the vast majority of human history, and even today in economic progress, the arrow points the other way.
The other way.
Yeah, the technology and the doing usually come first, through trial and error, through tinkering. The science comes later to explain what just happened.
So the steam engine came before thermodynamics.
Long before, we were building engines and powering factories while the scientists were still arguing about the basic nature of heat.
That makes sense.
The doers figured it out, but the promoters of the Soviet Harvard idea, this top-down structured approach, they miss the real engine of progress.
Okay, let's go back to Soviet Harvard. You mentioned it earlier. It feels like a massive contradiction.
How so?
Well, the Soviets were communists, and Harvard is the elite training ground for capitalists. Why lump them together?
Because structurally, they are doing the exact same thing. They both believe in central planning. The Soviets believed a small group of smart people in Moscow could plan the price of bread for millions of people. The Harvard model, at least in the context of this text, believes a small group of academics can plan the direction of innovation and the economy.
It's the smartest guys in the room fallacy.
Exactly. And because they believe in planning, they completely miss the concept of optionality.
Optionality. Let's unpack that for a second. Because when I hear optionality, I think of stock options or maybe just having a lot of choices on a dinner menu. I want to keep my options open.
Right, right.
What does it mean here?
In this context, optionality is about asymmetry. It's a mathematical reality, not just a preference. It means being in a position where you have very little to lose, but potentially huge amounts to gain.
So low downside, high upside.
Right. And the source makes a really provocative statement here. It says, optionality doesn't require complex knowledge or high intelligence. It merely requires rationality in choice.
Explain that. How can you change the world without being intelligent?
Well, imagine you are looking for a treasure in 1,000 rooms.
Okay.
You don't need to be a genius geologist to find it. You just need to be able to run into a room, look around quickly, see there's no treasure, and leave.
Right.
That costs you very little time. Low downside. But if you do find the treasure, massive upside.
So the rationality is just knowing when to cut your losses and when to keep the winner.
Exactly. You don't need a grand theory of treasure location. You just need the ability to search cheaply.
Wow.
The source says that the promoters of organized research, the Soviet Harvard types, don't account for this. They think you need a grand plan, a teleological goal.
Teleological meaning directed toward a specific end.
Right. They say, we are going to find the treasure in room 402 because our model says so.
And then they spend billions analyzing room 402 and it's empty.
Yes. Meanwhile, the tinkerer has checked 500 rooms and already found the gold.
That's a great analogy.
And here's the kicker. The source accuses the academic establishment of needing to rewrite the history of technology to justify their existence.
To make it look like they knew it all along.
Exactly. They have to pretend they knew where the gold was from the start.
That is a heavy accusation. It basically says you guys are taking credit for things you didn't actually cause just to keep your funding.
It is heavy. And it sets the stage for the next part of the text, which is a scathing critique of the modern university system.
Right.
If the university isn't the engine of creation, what is it? The author recounts a conversation with Alison Wolfe about the dire problem with education.
This is where the Vuitton bag analogy comes in. I read that and I literally laughed out loud, but then I felt a little defensive.
It's a biting comparison. The text says that for the new Asian and U.S. upper class, Ivy League universities, Harvard specifically, have become status luxury goods, like a Louis Vuitton bag or a Cartier watch.
So you're not going there to learn. You're going there to, wear the label.
You're going there to signal status, to show you are part of the club.
But hold on, I have to push back here.
Yeah.
Is it really just a handbag?
Yeah.
I mean, doctors go to medical school. Engineers go to engineering school.
Sure.
You can't just tinker your way into brain surgery. There is actual knowledge transfer happening, isn't there? It feels a little cynical to say it's purely cosmetic.
That's the trillion-dollar question. The source isn't arguing that zero learning happens. Of course, you learn things.
Right.
But the argument, and this relies on Alison Wolfe's research, is about the aggregate value to society. The text calls them rent extractor.
Rent extractors. That sounds like something a landlord does.
In economics, rent-seeking is a very specific, very negative term. It's when you increase your own wealth without creating any new wealth.
Give me an example.
If I invent a new vaccine, I make the pie bigger. I added value.
Right?
If I put a chain across a public river and charge you $5 to swim across, I'm extracting rent. I'm not adding value. I'm just capturing it because I control the bottleneck.
And the university is the chain across the river.
That's the argument. The source describes a massive transfer of money. Middle-class parents are plowing their savings into these institutions. Why? Because you need the name, the Harvard degree, the Yale degree, to get the high-paying job.
It's a bottleneck.
Exactly.
So individually, it makes total sense for me to send my kid to Harvard. It's a rational choice.
Completely rational. For the individual, it's a ticket to the game. But the source argues that collectively, society doesn't advance. We just spend more and more resources fighting for the same number of seats at the table.
Just bidding up the price of the ticket.
Yes. The text explicitly compares this to racketeering.
In a way, it is no different from racketeering. That is brutal.
It implies coercion. Pay us or your child falls out of the middle class.
Wow.
And who benefits? The text lists them. Administrators, real estate developers, and professors. It's a wealth transfer from the middle class to the academic bureaucracy.
It's painting a picture of a giant bubble.
Yeah.
And usually, when we talk about bubbles like the housing bubble or the dot-com bubble, the question is, when does it pop? The host asks this question in the text, or rather the text addresses it. Is this sustainable?
And the author's answer is surprisingly optimistic, but in a very cynical way. He says BS is fragile, obviously using the full word there.
The yes is fragile.
It's a profound observation about systems. The author asks, which scam in history has lasted forever?
None of them.
Right. The implication is that nature, or history, eventually filters out things that don't add value. He says, I have an enormous faith in time and history as eventual debunkers of fragility.
So the education system is fragile because it's built on what? Why is it fragile?
Because it has been growing without external stressors. In nature, things that don't get stressed, that don't face challenges, they become weak.
If you lay in bed for 6 months, your muscles atrophy.
It's exactly. The text predicts that eventually the thing will collapse.
Because it's protected. It's
Yep.
protected by student loans, by government grants, by cultural prestige. It never has to face the market reality.
Exactly. And there's a little footnote there that I found really interesting. It mentions fragilistas.
Fragilistas. Who are they?
These are the people who cause fragility. The text notes that education hates disorder. It is teleological. It wants a straight line from A to B. It caters to people who want the world to be neat and tidy.
But the world isn't neat and tidy.
Right. And because the world is not neat and tidy, these people, the fragilistas, are actually dangerous. They build systems that look perfect on paper, but blow up in reality.
It's amazing how this connects back to the lecturing birds idea. If you build a system that pretends the world is linear and orderly, you're building a fragile system.
Exactly.
And that is the perfect transition to the author's personal journey. Because he didn't just study this disconnect from afar, he lived it.
He absolutely lived it.
The text moves into an autobiographical section that I think gives us the emotional core of this whole argument.
It does. It shifts from abstract philosophy to a very cold, very lonely reality.
This is the attic section. And it starts with a very specific symbolic act in the mid-1990s. The author is standing at the corner of 45th Street and Park Avenue in New York City.
The absolute heart of the corporate world.
And he takes off his necktie and drops it in a trash can.
It's a shedding of skin. You have to understand, in the mid-90s, especially in finance, the tie was the uniform.
Right.
It was the symbol of submission to the linear career. Dropping it in the trash wasn't just a fashion choice. It was a declaration of war.
A war against the system. And then he retreats. He locks himself in an attic, and he stays there for years.
This is the part that really struck me. We often think of great ideas coming from collaboration or buzzing coffee shops or university labs. We have this romantic idea of the salon.
Yeah, bouncing ideas off people.
Right. But here, the source describes near complete silence.
He talks about the luminous effect of the sun shining on the snow, the harsh New York winters. It sounds incredibly lonely. He says, I thought of nothing else for years.
He was decompressed. He calls it active silence. He wasn't just sitting there twiddling his thumbs. He was trying to express hidden nonlinearities. He felt something coming out of his guts, but he didn't have the words for it yet.
He says he had a method before he had the central idea. What does that mean exactly?
It goes back to the doer versus the talker. He was a trader first. He had a method for trading. He knew how to make money when the market went crazy.
Okay.
He knew it in his fingers, in his gut. but he didn't have the philosophical language to explain why it worked. The attic was where he translated the doing into thinking.
And the output of that attic time was a massive book called Dynamic Hedging. Now, I've looked this book up. It's not a light read. It's 600 pages of dense math and finance.
It's a technical manual on managing nonlinear derivative exposures. But the author admits something fascinating here. He says he knew in his guts that this wasn't just about trading options.
Right.
He knew his profession, finance, was just a platform.
He calls it a perfect platform to start thinking about these issues.
Right.
But why finance? Why not physics or biology?
Because finance gives you immediate feedback. If your model is wrong, you lose money. It's the ultimate skin in the game. In sociology, you can have a wrong theory for 50 years and still get tenure. In the market, you get wiped out by lunch.
That is a great point.
Yeah.
So he was looking at the text calls it the volatility of volatility.
Okay, let's break this down because this is the core technical concept.
Please do. Because volatility of volatility sounds like a tongue twister.
It does. Think of volatility as how much the temperature changes in a day. Maybe it swings from 60 to 70 degrees. That's standard volatility. But what if the range starts changing?
What do you mean?
What if one day it swings 10 degrees and the next day it swings 100 degrees? That is the volatility of volatility. It's when the chaos itself becomes chaotic.
So it's not just that the road is bumpy. It's that you don't know how big the bumps are going to be.
Exactly. And the author was trying to figure out how to navigate that deep chaos without getting destroyed.
And that brings us to the definition of nonlinearity provided in the text. Nonlinearity means that the response is not a straight line.
It sounds deceptively simple. We're trained to think linearly. If I study 1 hour, I get a C. If I study 2 hours, I get a B. If I study 4 hours, I get an A. Input equals output.
But the real world isn't like that.
No, think about traffic. That's the classic nonlinear example.
Okay, traffic.
If you add one car to an empty highway, nothing happens. Add another, nothing. But there's a tipping point. You add one more car, and suddenly the whole highway stalks.
Right, a traffic jam out of nowhere.
The response to that one car wasn't linear, it was catastrophic.
Or medicine. 1 aspirin cures your headache. 50 aspirins kill you. It's not 50 times better.
Exactly. The author was obsessed with these curves, these moments where the rules change, where you go from safe to dead very quickly, or conversely, where you go from nothing to rich.
And he wrote this massive book, Dynamic Hedging, completely ab ovo from the egg, from scratch.
That phrase ab ovo is important. He wasn't building on other people's research. He wasn't quoting the Soviet Harvard papers. He was building from his own observation of reality.
And then comes the story of what happened when he tried to publish it. The nuns and prostitutes incident.
Yes.
This is probably my favorite anecdote in the whole source text, but it's also the most revealing about how academia works.
It is hilarious. So the book is submitted to referees for peer review, but the person submitting it, the editor, makes a mistake.
A crucial mistake.
Instead of sending it to quants, the practitioners, the math guys in the trenches who actually trade, they send it to 4 academic financial economists.
The people from the ivory tower. The people who lecture birds.
Right. And the result, all 4 rejected it.
Total rejection. A slam dunk failure. Now, if that happened to me, I'd be crushed. I'd think, well, I guess I'm an idiot. The experts hate it. But his reaction is completely different.
He looks at the rejection letters and goes, uh-huh.
Why?
Because of why they rejected it. The text says there was absolutely no intersection in their arguments.
What does that mean?
Reviewer A said it was too mathematical. Reviewer B said it wasn't mathematical enough. Reviewer C said the style was wrong. Reviewer D said the content was wrong.
They were all looking at the same elephant and describing a different monster.
Yes, exactly. He realized that if he were simply wrong, if he had made a logic error, they would have all pointed to page 42 and said, here is the error.
Right.
The fact that they were all confused in completely different ways proved that he was onto something new, something they didn't have a mental model for.
It validated the novelty of the work. It's actually a great mental model for you as the listener. If everyone hates your idea for the same reason, you're probably wrong. If everyone hates it for different reasons, you might be a genius.
Or at least you're doing something original. This is a classic example of anti-fragility. The chaos of the rejection actually strengthened his confidence.
And then he drops this incredible analogy. He compares practitioners listening to academics to, well, I'll let you say it.
It compares it to prostitutes listening to technical commentary by nuns.
It's startlingly rude. But let's strip away the shock value and look at the logic. Why that specific comparison?
It's about skin in the game. The prostitute is the practitioner in this colorful metaphor. They are the ones actually doing the work. They are in the field. They deal with the messy physical reality of the job.
And the nun.
The nun is the theorist. She might have read about sex. She might have deep moral theories about it. She might have written a dissertation on the sociology of it. But she has zero skin in the game. She has no practical experience.
So the author's saying, why would I, a trader who risks his own money every day, listen to a professor who receives a guaranteed salary regardless whether his theories are right or wrong?
Precisely. It's the informational asymmetry. The practitioner knows things that cannot be written down. The academic only knows what can be written down.
And this leads to another metaphor the text brings up, the Procrustean bed.
This is a reference to Greek mythology. Procrustes was a rogue smith, a bandit, really, who had an iron bed. He would invite travelers to sleep in it, but he had a strict rule. You had to fit the bed perfectly.
And if you didn't?
If you were too short, he would put you on a rack and stretch you until your joints snapped. If you were too tall, he would take an axe and chop off your legs.
Horrifying. But what does it mean in this context?
The point is that he forced the victim to fit the model, the bed, rather than changing the model to fit the victim. The text says the Procrustean bed in life consists precisely in simplifying the nonlinear and making it linear.
So when academics try to force the messy, volatile market into a neat linear equation, they are chopping off the legs of reality.
Yes, they're creating a simplification that distorts, and that distortion is dangerous. That's where the fragility comes from.
Right.
If you think the world fits in the bed, you're going to be very surprised when reality walks in and it's 7 feet tall.
Right.
You end up with the 2008 financial crisis. The model said it couldn't happen. Reality said, watch me.
So he writes this book, Dynamic Hedging. It eventually gets to the right reviewers,
Yeah.
quants, and it gets published. It becomes a classic in the field. But the story doesn't end there. The text describes a shift in his interest.
Right. He says his interest in the specific nonlinearity of financial exposures faded. He started thinking about broader things: uncertainty, randomness, philosophy.
He says, this may also have been due to the fact that I moved and no longer had that attic, which I think is a lovely detail. The environment shapes the thought process.
But then history intervenes again. We jump forward to the late 2000s. The financial crisis hits. The very thing he predicted would happen happens. And suddenly, the author is pulled back into the spotlight.
This is the second seclusion. But instead of an attic, he's in the media spotlight. And he describes this period as hell.
It's really a lament about the modern media landscape. He says he was de-intellectualized and corrupted.
Propelled into being a public commodity. I think a lot of people dream of being famous, of being a public commodity. But he hated it. Why?
Because it's the opposite of the attic. The attic is silence, focus, depth. The media world is noise, sound bites, shallowness. He says the public doesn't understand the scholar's job.
He outlines what he thinks the scholar's ideal routine should be. And it is definitely not going on TV to predict what the stock market will do tomorrow.
No. The routine he describes is beautiful in its simplicity. Read in bed in the morning. Write slowly. Argue with friends and family, but not in the morning, save that for later. And read again in bed before sleeping.
I love that argue with friends is part of the job description. It implies that friction is necessary for thinking.
It is, but notice what is not in the routine. Writing emails, dancing on a stage, or rewriting ideas for strangers.
He specifically mentions the local chapter of Networking International. You can feel the disdain for that kind of superficial connection. Networking.
He views it as a distraction from the real work. The real work is the slow, deep processing of information, not the rapid-fire reaction to current events. If you are checking your email every 5 minutes, you are not thinking, you are reacting, you are becoming a fragilista.
So he opts out. He retreats again. He uses email filters. He deletes things. He heals his soul. And in that silence, Lady Fortuna Luck visits him again.
This is the universal epiphany. He realizes that he had been sitting on a much bigger idea all along.
And it involves a porcelain cup.
Yes. He's sitting there living his new life as a solitary walker and chamomile drinker, which is a great image of recovery. And he looks at a porcelain cup. And he realizes this cup is nonlinear.
Okay, walk me through this. How is a cup nonlinear? It's just a cup.
Think about the stress on a cup. If you tap it lightly, nothing happens. If you tap it a little harder, nothing happens. If you tap it 50 times lightly, nothing happens. That's a linear input, but zero output.
Okay.
But if you hit it once very hard,
It shatters.
Exactly.
Yeah,
The response is not a straight line, it's discontinuous. The damage doesn't happen gradually, it happens all at once after a certain threshold.
it's the same volatility logic he applied to the market.
Exactly. He realized that the tools he developed for derivatives, trading for detecting fragility in financial markets, applied to everything. To cups, to political systems, to the human body, to the education bubble we talked about earlier.
This is the moment where the method becomes the central idea.
Yes. He realized that everything nonlinear is subject to the same laws of detection. He distinguishes between randomness, which is just a philosophical concept, like, oh, the world is random, and how things react to random events.
That distinction is key. You can't control randomness. I can't stop an earthquake from happening. I can't stop the stock market from crashing. I can't stop my clumsy elbow from hitting the cup.
No, you can't, but you can control the cup.
Yeah.
You can control how the building reacts to the earthquake. That is the essence of anti-fragility. It's shifting the focus from the event, which you can't predict, to the response, which you can design.
So let's define anti-fragility properly, because people think it just means resilient or robust.
No, it's different. A fragile thing. The cup hates volatility. If you drop it, it breaks. A robust thing like a rock doesn't care. If you drop it, it stays a rock.
Right.
But anti-fragile thing, it likes volatility. It gets stronger when you drop it.
Like the Hydra in Greek mythology. You cut off one head, two grow back.
Exactly, or your immune system. If I expose you to a few germs, a little bit of volatility, you don't just survive, you get stronger. If I put you in a sterile bubble with no volatility, you become weak. You become fragile.
And looking back at the text, we can see this pattern everywhere. The Soviet Harvard education system is fragile because it has no stressors. It's a porcelain cup waiting to be dropped.
And the mavericks and doers, the people, the author is vindicating they are anti-fragile. Why? Because they live in the chaos. They treat the world like an adventure, not a lecture. They use optionality. If they fail small. They just lose the cost of searching the room. If they succeed big. They find the treasure.
And the necktie in the trash can, that was an act of making himself anti-fragile.
It was removing himself from the fragile corporate ladder where one bad boss or one merger could destroy his career, and stepping into the wild. In the wild, you have to hunt for your food, which is scary, but you are free, and you can benefit from the unexpected.
It's a powerful message. It basically tells us that if we want to do something great, we might have to be willing to be unreasonable. We might have to be willing to be misunderstood by the nuns of our industry.
And we definitely have to be willing to ignore the networking international meetings and spend more time reading in bed.
I can certainly get behind that advice. It's about reclaiming your time and your attention. The source mentions that time is an eraser rather than a builder.
Let's pause on that. Time is an eraser.
We often think time builds things. Progress, accumulation, standing on the shoulders of giants.
But the source argues that time is mostly a filter. It acts like an acid. It erases what is fragile. The only things that survive are the things that can handle the stressors of time. The education bubble. If it's a scam, time will erase it. The linear models that don't work, time will erase them.
But doing the practical knowledge, the navigational skills that survives.
That survives. There is a footnote in the text about Xenophon, the Greek historian. He describes Socrates. Socrates despised sterile knowledge. He wanted to know how to use the stars to navigate a ship, not just stare at them to understand cosmic causes.
That's the doer mindset again. Don't just analyze the stars, steer the ship.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's try to crystallize what we've learned. We've gone from the Soviet Harvard illusion to the attic, from the trash can on 45th Street to the porcelain cup.
I think the core takeaway is a call to skepticism. Skepticism about organized linear systems. We need to be wary of the Vuitton bag credentials that promise success but mostly just extract rent. And we need to place a higher value on doing, on trial and error, on the rationality and choice that the source calls optionality.
It's also a call to embrace nonlinearity, to understand that the world doesn't move in straight lines, and that our lives shouldn't either. We shouldn't try to fit ourselves into the Procrustean bed of a standardized career path.
And to recognize the Procrustean beds in our own thinking. Where are we chopping off the legs of reality to make it fit our simple models?
That is the question I want to leave you, the listener, with today. We talked about the prediction that the education system will collapse because it has grown without external stressors. It's fragile.
So the question is,
if you look at your own life or your own industry or your own career, what is currently growing without any stressors? What part of your life feels smooth, uninterrupted, and perfectly linear.
Because if the source is right, that is the very thing that is destined to collapse. That is your fragile point.
And maybe, just maybe, it's time to introduce a little volatility on purpose, before time introduces it for you.
Maybe it's time to throw a necktie in the trash. Or at least skip a meeting and go read in the attic.
I think the author would approve. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you next time.